Hello everyone, welcome to the first chapter of Huawei HCIP OpenELDR course. And in this section, we will continue to introduce the common service management of OpenELDR. In the previous section, we practiced configuring the Apache main page and setting up DSO, NPM, and persistent connections. This section we describes how to configure Apache static resources, in addition to viewing the HTML web page, configure static files or directories, and configure access permissions. After understanding the configuration of static resources, we need to implement a file server in some scenarios. For example, you can install and configure the static resources of Apache HTTPD so that the others can directly obtain the service through the web page address.
The Apache HTTP service also supports configuring of static resources by file system path and URI. In file system path mode, directories or files on the server can be used as static resources for users to access. Files can also be represented by wildcards and regular expressions. The path to directory and file can be based on the Apache home directory or redirected to other paths using alias. Let's try configuring static resource. First, we need prepared resources. Create the test directory in home source. So we run make directory and home source test command. And we create the directory. And under this directory, we create test1 and test2 files in this test directory. And run the command cd home source test. In the test1 file, we use echo hello test1, send it to test1 file. Okay, and we can use ls to check, and we can use cat to check the content. Hello test1. Test2 is the soft link of test1, so we run the command link and soft test1 and test2. We use ll command to check it out. Test1 and test2. Test2 link to test1. Okay, then we add the content in the configuration file of the etc httpd conf.d. So we use vim command conf.d and source.conf. Here we added the test directory and we set the permission to all open. So here I copied the command. And at the same time, we added the options index to each directory. These options indicate that if index.html does not exist, the current directory is indexed and the file system of the current directory is displayed. So here we add the options configuration under the home source, and also under the test configuration, we add the options. We save and exit. We reload the service again. Okay, currently we have two directories. One is the home directory, home source, and the other is home source test. We open the browser and access the public IP address of the HTTP server public IP with port 81/test directory. The test directory structure is displayed here. The index.html file does not exist under the test directory, therefore the directory structure is displayed. This test1 file, if we click it and open it, hello test1 will display. In the test directory, actually, test2 is the soft link of the test1, which is not displayed here. So how do we show test2? Here we need to modify the source.conf configuration file. Edit the follow same links parameter under the test configuration. After the options indexes, it's indicating that allows access to the source files of soft linked file in the directory. And also for home source configuration, we can edit this configuration. And then they can access the soft link and save and reload the services. We can view the soft link file test2. If you click it, hello test1 is displayed. Up to now, we added a directory file as the static resources and configured the directory permission in the configuration file. If the /test file is not added to the configuration file, we can view static resources by directory accessing the public IP address with port number 81/test of the HTTPD server. If the configuration file is not modified, all files in the default directory are displayed. The directory description is added to the source.conf file to facilitate permission control. In addition, if you create an index.html file in the test directory, and we cannot access the test1 and test2 resources. This is because the default page defined in the configuration file is the capital index.html. From here you can see it's a capital I. The system returns the page contents first. The current directory is indexed only if the specific main page cannot be found in the directory. So this is a way to use a directory as a static resource. In addition, we can specify static resources by aliasing. Modify the source configuration file. By here, we add in a line home source test2 to alias test2. So alias/test2 is turned to home source test2. Okay, after I configured, when I access /test2, it still turned to original home source test directory. We save and quit, and then we reload the service again. After that, we enter the public IP address of the HTTPD service with port 81/test2 in the address box of the browser. The result is the same as that before. In the preceding example, alias is the path behind the protocol host name and port number in the request URL. Next, let's try setting access for static resources. We set the source IP address so that all source IP address except the public IP address of the local computer can access the page. That is, disable the public IP address of the local computer to obtain the public IP address of the local computer. we can enter the cip.cc in the browser. So here we open the browser and cip.cc, and here I can obtain my public IP address. So we modify the source.conf configuration file and comment out the original allow, override, and required lines in the test directory configuration. And then we can change them to the new ones. First, we use hash to comment out. We type the new content. Here I copied the configuration, required or granted, required not, the new IP, that is my public IP address. Okay, and after that, in addition, the directory path needs to be the absolute path home source test configuration setting to take effect. Okay, now we check the configuration one by one. Save, reload the Apache configuration service, and then we back to the browser, refresh the page. The message is forbidden. You don't have permission to access the resource is displayed. This indicates that the public IP address request is forbidden because I have configured to forbidden my own public IP. And then we turn back to the command line. We can use the curl to check the public IP of the server. The directory information is returned because we use a local IP address for the request. The page can be returned. So if the browser returns a forbidden page, you can also view the reason on the log page. So we use tail command to view the system log. You can see that the access error is client denied by server configuration, home source test. So we can see that this is a result of configuration file limit. In addition, we can also use the .htaccess file to set permissions. So we continue to edit the source.conf configuration file. And in the previous step, we commanded out allow, override. And now we need to uncommand allow, override, and change none to all. This indicates that all permission-related configurations are stored in .htaccess file in the specified directory instead of the source.conf file. Then we comment out the following permission settings. Okay, we comment out the previous permission configuration. We save and exit. We need to create the .htaccess file in this home source test directory. The file needs to be stored in the directory where the permission is controlled. So now we use vim command, create htaccess. In the file, we added the configuration of required IP configuration. So I copied the command here. we save the configuration, exit, then reload the service again. After that, we test the browser again. But the forbidden information is still displaying. And we can back to the command line and we current the local IP address to test the permission can be set by using the htaccess file. There will be the same performance. So you only need to set the allow override parameter in the configuration file. In addition to setting access based on the source address, we can also set access based on the account. So we can use command htpassword-cb.password test capital H Huawei at 123 command to create the htpassword file in the test directory. And the file can be used for basic HTTP authentication and security protection. The username is test and password is Huawei at 123, and we run ls-a command to view the new configuration file. We also need a few lines of user configuration to the htaccess file. We need to add some new configurations. So here, I copied some command, indicates that the authentication type is basic, and plain text authentication is used. The test displaying in the authentication log box is HTTP test. The password file path is home source test.password. The account used for authentication is a newly created test account. Okay, save and quit. We can reload the Apache configuration, and then we turn to the browser, open it on a local computer. It's need enter the username, test, and password to log in to the server. After login, you can access test1 and test2 in the directory structure. So that is the static resources configuration for Apache.
This section will describe how to configure the static resources of Apache HTTP service, set files and directories, and get familiar with the configuration of access permission. Next, we will introduce how to configure a virtual host to enable the same HTTP service to access different conduct in different access modes. Finally, apply for a certificate to implement HTTPS access. Thank you for watching.